Bold and raw perspectives of local politics. Important information which impacts our community, nation, and world. Exposing truth, transparency, and getting to the heart of relevant issues that you just won't see in the clickbait media. And always keeping it real. It's the Michelle Tanner Podcast.
But I won't back down.
Hello, good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Michelle Tanner Podcast. I'm really excited to have in studio with me here, all the way from Northern Utah, I have the amazing Frank Mylar, who is running to be Utah's next Attorney General. Welcome to the show. Thanks for making the trip down.
Thanks, Michelle. It's great to be here.
Absolutely. So I wanted to take the first few minutes first and quickly update everyone, especially here in Southern Utah, but really this is applicable to all of Utah, about a special meeting that we called down here in Washington County for our Washington County Republican Party that we held yesterday. Because believe it or not, we had bylaws here in our county Republican Party that was preventing our party and leadership from fully endorsing our convention winners.
Wow.
Which, I mean, if we care about the caucus convention system, why on earth would we waste our time as delegates and have 4,000 people show up and spend a 17-hour day nominating these candidates, not to mention the countless hours that goes into vetting candidates, to only have our winners get a pat on the back, and then they're up against the big money signature candidates, highly funded, and we're not going to actively promote and fully endorse those candidates. So many of us down here in Washington County saw that injustice. Last year, they apparently didn't enforce those bylaws because last year we had a head-to-head race before the primary between a convention winner and a signature candidate, and the party fully got behind the convention candidate. No mention of the signature candidate at all. And we saw how powerful it is when the party truly gets behind and rallies behind a candidate and a winner. It is powerful.
Yes.
And that convention candidate went on to win, who wasn't necessarily a strong candidate, but having that party support is crucial. So I want to give a shout out to every CCC member in Washington County who showed up to this special meeting last night that we called really as quickly as possible, as quickly as some of us knew that this was an issue, that our candidates weren't being fully supported. And overwhelmingly, the committee voted in favor of amending the bylaw to allow our leadership to fully put not only support from the party, but also financial support behind our convention nominees, which is huge. So thank you for everyone who was involved in that process. And now I really look forward to seeing the Washington County Republican Party come full court press like we've seen them do with other convention winners and really support these candidates. So I wanted to bring that up, Frank. I know, I'm assuming you're a supporter of the caucus
Absolutely.
Convention system, and you did come out a nominee as well.
Yes.
You and one other, and you were the top vote getter, though.
Yes.
There in convention, and just really inches away actually from being
5
the
votes.
sole nominee. 5 votes. Oh my gosh, that is just crazy close. So
Yep.
Congratulations on that, though, by gaining the trust and support of the delegates who truly do vet our candidates.
Well, and the amazing thing is I had a 12-day federal jury trial leading up to that. And I couldn't even politic very much. My wife and my 2 adult daughters, they had to go out and do a lot of campaigning for me. But the message started spreading. The message started spreading that, 1, I have by far the most experience. 2, most of it is in constitutional law. And 3, I actually fight for people's constitutional rights. That's something I do. And it's not just theoretical. And I think as that word spread, there was a shift. I came from way behind, I think, and ended up winning by a landslide.
And that was really phenomenal. And I'll be honest, I had you on the podcast prior to convention, and I was more than happy to talk to you and learn more about your views. I was worried though because I knew that you hadn't had the opportunity to get out there like the other candidates. Because as you mentioned, I think you had like a family wedding and you had I
had a
big
Supreme
trial.
Court brief, and then I had a 10th Circuit brief before that trial.
Wow. And so to see you be the top vote getter at convention was really phenomenal. So yeah.
Well, thanks.
I think, like you said, though, when you have the background and truly the experience needed for this position, that word does spread when people are paying attention and truly vetting candidates.
That's true. I think it did.
So what do you see as the Attorney General? What are the things, top 3 things, say, that you would address as the Attorney General, and what really can the Attorney General role do here in the state of Utah?
Absolutely. Well, the biggest thing right now on my horizon, there's 3 big things, and one of them is fighting for girls' bathrooms and sports, and not to have any exceptions. And the Title IX, I knew this change was coming because I'm an Honor Corps attorney with Alliance Defending Freedom. And that organization is the leading organization fighting for our constitutional rights, including protecting women's bathrooms and sports. And so they're on the forefront of this. And so as Attorney General, I'm going to bring them in. They're not going to charge us a dime, and they're going to provide the best legal counsel to help us fight this. Arkansas was the first to file a lawsuit regarding fighting these Title IX changes. And basically what they've done is they've completely gutted Title IX, created in 1973 to help protect women's sports, and the way they've defined it into transgender issues, it actually guts the idea of protecting women's sports. And so we will fight against that. That's number 1. 2, I'm going to fight federal encroachment. Now, there's 2 components. There's the bureaucracy component, and then there's the land component. Bureaucracy, 2 examples: Davis County School District, Department of Justice. I'm going to kick them out. They should not be running that school district. 2, they should not be telling our prisons and jails who they can house and how they can house them and what types of conditions of confinement they have to have. We need to be able to follow the Constitution and not their issues regarding transgender issues. And so I will also kick them out of making any decisions on who we're going to have and how we're going to care for prisoners here in Utah. Now, the second component, which is huge and it's looming, and I'm always going to be fighting this. I'm going to fight this the entire time I'm in office. I'm going to look for a full court press, everything I can do to fight the feds regarding federal encroachment. Bear in mind, I'm already fighting them in eastern Utah regarding the railroad that's at stake there. But I'm going to not only fight the land issues, I'm going to bring maybe some new lawsuits, but I'm also going to look for different federal regs. I'm going to look for different laws that the state can pass to push back on federal encroachment. And I'm really not going to stop until huge portions of the land is actually turned into Utah land and not federal land. We shouldn't be begging the government for our cattle ranchers to be able to use that land for recreational opportunities, for building roads and enforcing the law on these lands. We shouldn't have to be fighting the feds to do these basic things on really what is land that is within the state of Utah.
Right. Like, what is the pushback on that? Because I know this has been, an issue for years and years, but it doesn't seem like anything ever really actually gets done. Has someone just not taken the challenge on strong enough, or like, what's the reason why that hasn't been done yet?
Yeah, we missed a window of opportunity, a golden opportunity in 2016. When Trump was elected and we had a Republican Congress, Senate, and House, we should have put full court press saying, change the law, make it Utah land. I don't know where we were, but we were nowhere to be found. We didn't do it. I'm going to be ready this time. If we have that majority and we have Trump in and we have the majority, that's our opportunity again. It doesn't always come. And I'm going to fight as much as possible to get those changes through, because they're absolutely essential. We can't keep playing this game, because what happens is every time you get a Democrat, they have crazy rules, and this federal encroachment increases. When we have a decent Republican, then we have actually more reasonable use of our land. It's just kind of like a pendulum, keeps flipping back and forth.
Right.
The only way to change this is to make large portions of it Utah land and not federal land.
Right.
So
and it's a large percentage here in Utah.
It's almost 70%.
Right. Yeah.
So the third issue is fighting the illegal immigration. People dump illegal aliens in our state. I want to make that a felony. I'll have to go to the legislature and I'll say anyone that helps anyone that pays for somebody to come to Utah when they're an illegal alien, I want it to be a felony and I want to be able to prosecute them. And I can extradite when it's a felony. I can tell you no pilot's going to risk that. They're not going to risk losing their pilot's license. And so that will close the faucet from them dumping people. Then we're going to round out the people they dumped and we're going to send them back to New York. We can't send them out to another country because they already threw away their documents before they entered our country. And that's how they were able to travel in these other countries, is they had documentation. They throw it away before they sneak in across this border that they don't even have to sneak in anymore. And some people have said, Frank, why don't you just send them back to Mexico? I go, most of them aren't even Mexicans. This is just a global problem.
Yeah.
It's China, it's Russia, it's people in the Middle East, people from terrorist countries. It's a huge problem. And if New York wants to be a sanctuary state, that's great. We need to push back and say, no, we're not going to be a sanctuary state, de facto or otherwise, and we're going to just ship them back. And I think so those are the three issues that I want to get involved in. I've worked with national groups on these kinds of things, like Immigration Law Institute and so on, and I will bring them in also, just like I will the ADF on Title IX, to give us the best legal expertise. And like I said, it's almost always free of charge when I bring these groups in.
Wow, that's amazing. And I mean, to that point of illegal immigration, because this is always a hot discussion of, is Utah a sanctuary state or are they not? And from what I can see is, no, we don't have that technical designation officially, even though ICE did come out and say that and then retracted that statement.
Right.
But through policy, through legislation of providing illegal immigrant children taxpayer-funded health insurance, increasing the limit of E-Verify, providing driver privilege cards. And so you have these things that essentially make it a hospitable place to be here. Is there anything that can be addressed from the Attorney General side when the legislator or the governor is pushing these policies into law that make it a hospitable place for illegal immigrants to be here?
You hit the nail on the head. We're not officially a sanctuary state. I call us a de facto sanctuary state. De facto means it's not actually in the law, but it's in the actions. And if we allow people to dump people into this state and don't do anything about it, we're a de facto state. And if you provide these benefits like you just named, that makes it even more a de facto sanctuary state. So we need to roll that back. Now, as Attorney General, I can look and see, are there violations of law in allowing this? If there are, I will bring it out to the public. If there's not, and there should be, I'm going to go to the legislature and say, we need these laws. We need you to close these loopholes.
Right. Okay, I want to switch gears a little bit because obviously you're in an election.
Yes.
You are up against other candidates. And I want to really get to the root of what differentiates you from the other candidates, why people should choose you over the other candidates. And, I don't have anything, and I would assume you don't have anything personal against the other candidates.
Not at all.
Some flags for me, though, that I would like to discuss is, we have one candidate, Derek Brown, who's essentially been endorsed by Governor Cox, who had Deidre Henderson, our current lieutenant governor, who's over elections, on his finance committee. When I found that out, that was just like, are you kidding me? Who thought that was a good idea? And then you have the other candidate, Rachel Terry, who is currently actually in a position that was appointed by Governor Cox. So obviously has some direct ties to Governor Cox there as well. And keep in mind, we have Governor Cox, who has stated that he would like this position of Attorney General that is currently voted on, elected by we the people. He would instead like to transfer that power by the people to himself in a king-like fashion of having more centralized power instead of separation of power. And he himself would like to appoint the Attorney General position. So when I see those connections to Governor Cox by the other two candidates, I'm automatically very concerned.
Yeah.
So to me, that's a big differentiator. But obviously, I know you're bringing the most experience to the table. What other things do you feel like differentiates you and would you like to address?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, first of all, obviously, Derek, he mostly has a Congress background. He worked for Senator Bennett. I don't know why he doesn't mention that. He worked for Senator Hatch. He worked as basically deputy personnel director for Mike Lee, and worked for about a year and a half, I think, in the same law firm, Sidley Austin, in Washington, D.C. So he's practiced very, very little in the state of Utah. And then Rachel is more a government bureaucracy, a good portion of her time with state school board, deputy director of legal cities and towns, and now risk management, which is essentially like an insurance. It's a self-insurance fund. You manage claims adjusters and you manage claims. And you don't manage attorneys. You know, neither of them have managed attorneys ever. You know, it's interesting because they say, oh, well, Frank has all this legal experience, which is true. But we're supposed to manage attorneys in that office. Well, they've never managed attorneys. I've managed them in the Attorney General's office, but I've also managed them outside. I think it shouldn't be overlooked lightly. The fact, one, I worked for 3 different attorney generals over a 12-year period. I worked in every major area of that office, which is significant. Rachel did work in one area, the civil rights section. I worked in that area too. I worked in a number of other areas though as well. But the other thing is that I'm the only one with criminal law experience, and that's a third of what that office does. I've also worked on criminal prosecutions. I've even done criminal defense. And I've also done criminal appeals and fought board of pardons writs where inmates were trying to attack their sentence and things like that. So those are things that are actually very relevant in the AG's office. And if you really don't know what you're doing in that office, you don't know these various areas, it's a severe deficit in trying to lead. I mean, how much credibility do you have in the office if you've only worked in one little area or worked in none? And so you really have, on one hand, someone that's worked a certain practice, a certain amount of their being an attorney has actually been mostly non-attorney positions. And then you have another, but in the executive government. And then you have another one that's really spent most of their time working with Congress, with congressmen and senators and three different senators. That's not attorney experience. All 36 years, now almost 37, I graduated 37 years ago from law school. All of that, for me, has been practicing law and fighting things in the courts. But what really distinguishes me, having 36 years, is like 3 times what their actual attorney experience is. But beyond that, it's the constitutional cases that I fight on behalf of people. I'm a member of, like I said, Honor Corps member with the Alliance Defending Freedom, and I got that status by helping spend hundreds and hundreds of hours defending people's and vindicating their constitutional rights without charging them a dime. And so there's numerous cases that I've helped people vindicate their constitutional rights. My competitors haven't even fought one case. Not one.
Wow.
Parental rights, religious freedom. So they're talking about these lofty issues, and they're going to do this and that, and they're just really care about these issues. Well, my point is, they're an attorney, right? Wouldn't there have been one case, one time in this long career that they say they have, where they should have gone into court and actually fought for people's rights? That's huge. That's actually a huge distinction, because I'll tell you something. If they don't win Attorney General, I can almost guarantee you they're not going to be fighting people's constitutional rights tomorrow. I will be. That's who I am. I'm not going to stop helping people with their constitutional issues, whether I get elected or not. If I'm elected, I'll have a lot better opportunity to help people in a broad way. It won't be an isolated, people here or there. It will be the whole state will be able to benefit from my constitutional expertise.
Absolutely. And that experience is really pivotal to that role, because as we see, and it happens across all areas of people in elected positions, is they say all of these lofty things in their campaigns that sound really nice, but at all levels of government, and I've experienced this at the local level, but you see it at every level of government, when people actually get elected, if they are not strong, principled person who truly understands their role and isn't afraid to speak up for that and principles, it is so easy for them to get sucked in, as you mentioned, the bureaucracy, and the other candidates seem to already be somewhat entrenched in that bureaucracy. I don't want an attorney general who is going to be at the beck and call of someone like Spencer Cox. That is terrifying to me. And hopefully we don't have to have Spencer Cox next year. But regardless, it's terrifying to think of an attorney general who is not a full, independently functioning office, who's not afraid to go up against any of the other branches or investigate any of the other branches. And that leads me to our elections, because that's a big concern for the majority of Utahns is transparency in our elections, securing our elections. And we did talk about this a little bit on the last podcast we did together, but realistically, what kind of things can you do as the Attorney General to help shore up that process?
Well, you have what they call the bully pulpit. You can talk about these issues, and that's very important. I'm not over elections. It's actually the lieutenant governor. I actually think it should be the Secretary of State. I will go on board to say, as an elected official, it should be the Secretary of State. This is not right that it's under the governor. And so it should be a separate person that doesn't report to the governor, just like the Attorney General doesn't report to the governor. I think that's very important just from a separation of powers issue. Beyond that, there's some issues that I have that I can call out. Like one of the biggest areas where fraud happens is these mail-out ballots. And I will do what I can to say, no, you can't just mail out ballots willy-nilly. Every time you ever mail out a ballot, someone should have to come into the office, show a voter ID and a license. And I think that that's the way all voting should be. So if you're going to get a mail-in ballot, you have to do that every time you get a mail-in ballot for every election.
Yeah.
Instead of this automatically sending these out, and then people get multiple ballots, or they get a ballot at different addresses, because they haven't cleaned up the rolls or something. So what's preventing somebody from filling out that ballot because that person doesn't even live there,
Right.
And sending it in? There's nothing checking these things. And so there's some things like that I can do. But a lot of it is bringing these issues to attention. And I had said that last time. One of the things that I'll bring things to the attention of the public every time they come up. One of them, like it was the opportunity during COVID. People called me and said, hey, what are our constitutional rights? Hey, can our church meet? Can our school meet? Can our religious school meet? And I would be able to weigh in and say, yes, you can, and this is why. And there's a thing called the First Amendment that allows you to exercise your religious freedom, but then helping people with getting religious vaccinations. Just think, if I was the Attorney General, I could come out affirmatively and say, hey, state and local governments, you dare not infringe people's constitutional rights just because there's a super flu going on.
Amen.
And that's what, we want to make it very clear. And also some of the laws, we were told that churches and schools had to follow these. Private schools I'm talking about now. Public schools, obviously, they have to follow whatever, the government's saying. But a private institution doesn't. And some of these laws didn't even apply to them because they applied to places of public accommodation. That's not what a private school or private church is. And other private places also, those laws wouldn't even apply to it. But nobody explained that to people. But they called me. I explained it to people. That's what I'll be able to do as Attorney General. The entire state will be able to say, these are our rights. You need not to overstep them. I'm going to also come out like this Governor DeSantis did in Florida. I'll come out and say, you better not fire somebody because they're not getting a vaccine, and you better not be asking them medical issues because there's a thing called HIPAA, and it prevents you from delving into these medical issues. And so it would be great to have an Attorney General that's actually speaking out on these issues affirmatively. So just like the election issues, there's a lot of issues where I can speak out on and actually have an impact.
Yeah, I'm so glad you mentioned COVID, because for me, that's a big check box for me of I just look back when I'm vetting a candidate of, okay, what were they doing in 2020 and 2021?
Yes.
Because that tells me almost everything I need to know about how principled that person is, the amount of courage that person has, because it was very difficult for people to speak out.
Yeah.
And speak the truth during that time because of the amount of sheer propaganda happening that fooled a lot of people and silenced a lot of people. So I appreciate that you've proven that you are already one who, when the pressure's up, you will speak up, you will defend our God-given rights protected by the Constitution. So one of the things that's really bothered me during that time with COVID, with the mask mandate in our schools, and I'm curious your thoughts on this because it's now coming to light, which I felt it was this way at the time, but now there's actually, documented evidence coming to light of the amount of federal funds that were received. It's looking like close to $1 billion in federal funds that were received with a string attached of keeping children masked in school.
Yes.
What's the legality of that? Is there anything that could have been done because we were getting all of the back and forth from the different entities, whether it be the school board, the health department, the governor's office. They were all blaming each other during that time saying, oh, our hands are tied. There's nothing we can do. We just have to mask the kids. There's nothing we can do. But yet, meanwhile, they're, lining the coffers with federal funds at the expense of our children. Is there anything from a legal standpoint that could have been done or can still be done about that?
Sure. I mean, it was done by Governor DeSantis in Florida, who said that he wanted parents to make those decisions.
Yeah.
And he had to push back because Biden was going to threaten to take away the school lunches of these kids. It's like, really? Oh, you really care about whether these kids get school lunches, apparently, right? That he would do that. And he fought that, and they looked stupid when when that was revealed.
Yeah.
And he ended up winning. If you don't have a governor that's going to do that, you need an attorney general that's going to do that.
Yes.
And the big thing, you look at who's endorsing that. When they're endorsed, they're controlled. They're owned by these individuals. There's a lot of politicians in endorsing my competitors. And the people that have endorsed me actually know my legal work.
Yes.
The people that are endorsing my competitors have no clue to their legal work. They've never seen them in court. They've never looked at their briefs, and it's like, it's just theoretical. It's more, people should look at that and say, that's a control issue. This endorsement doesn't come without the fact that they're endorsing them because they want them to follow along with them, politically. That's what this is about, and so yeah, you look at endorsements, you look at, what kind of work they've actually done. But this is something that I think that the masks, as well as a lot of things about COVID, really need to be pushed back on. I have a friend who was a youth leader in the Salt Lake area, and they were trying to have some sort of a youth meeting in a parking lot. They were staying in cars, to try to be decent about this, and they were trying to play these, kind of COVID games, saying, okay, we're not going to have this mass meeting. We're going to be in our cars and we're going to be in this parking lot. Well, the police ended up coming and breaking it up.
Wow.
But I'll tell you, it has an impact if the Attorney General speaks his mind, say, this is not right. And who did speak his mind is Justice Alito from the U.S. Supreme Court. Because when he toured the country during COVID, he says he's never seen such a retraction of our civil liberties in his entire lifetime.
Amen.
Is what he was seeing during COVID. That's our U.S. Supreme Court justice. So I think I'm in good company,
Yes.
Taking these positions that, no, we don't just take away people's constitutional rights willy-nilly just because, someone named Dr. Fauci and a couple others, claim that we need to do something.
Right. Well, and what's the balance when it comes to the vaccine mandate? Because at that time we had Governor Cox and Deidre Henderson coming out and openly saying, we support businesses mandating the vaccine on their employees. And their workaround by making that okay was, we're just supporting the free market. And if the businesses want to enforce that on their employees, we're just telling them we support them. But what they're really saying is, you don't get to provide for your family if you don't submit to what we're telling you as non-medical professionals, even what you need to inject into your body, which is highly disturbing as a medical professional myself, who was actually removed from the schedule of the emergency department that I had worked in for 6 years because I was breastfeeding my baby. There was no safety data to show that the vaccine was safe for me to take. I had already had the infection, and I said, no, the science shows I shouldn't get this.
Right.
My conscience shows I shouldn't get this. My freedoms show I shouldn't get this. And so it was highly disturbing to see people all the way at the top of the state supporting that decision for my employer to be able to remove me from the schedule simply for refusing this injection.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's where you need the voice of an attorney general straightening these things out. Now in Florida, again, you had Governor DeSantis saying no one's going to get fired. But if we don't have that, if we don't have a governor or other people that are going to say these things, it's incumbent to have the attorney general say, hey, this is what our Constitution says. This is what the law says. The law says there's a thing called HIPAA, that you don't delve in and inquire about people's medical conditions. We don't talk to them about their cancer treatment, and any number of medical things. You do not delve into that. It's inappropriate for an employer to delve into that as well. If you come to work, you're healthy, what's the issue? Right? And it's, and it was, of course, astounding what the Biden administration did to our armed forces, kicking out some of the most courageous individuals there are because they wouldn't get the vaccine. Well, you know what? People need to wake up and smell the coffee. Not everyone gets vaccines. I've never gotten a flu vaccine. Well, no, that's true. I've gotten from 2, I think, in my life. I think once I got it and I got the flu. I almost never get the flu, though. And so I'm thinking, why do I need to get it? I'm not getting the flu.
Right.
And it's okay for people to think this way. But this was not, like I said, a killer virus. This was a super flu.
Right.
We need to be honest about it. We also find now that the data shows that those physicians that opined to their heart patients that they better not get this have been validated through and through and through. Because I know people here in Utah who said, my doctor said, I better not get this because I have a congenital heart issue.
Right.
And thankfully they didn't. Because as we know, people that didn't have heart issues died because of blood clots, because of different various heart-related issues. And so, again, why are we even delving into this? It's ludicrous for people to act like vaccines are the end all. It's another medical thing. It's some people get back surgery. Some people say, no, I'm going to live with it. I'm going to try to do physical therapy. I'm going to, you know what I mean? It's their choice to how they treat medical ailments as they come. And what we need to never lose sight of, and I will make sure we don't lose sight of it, is what are our constitutional rights? And so I will come out and say to employers, private and public, you dare not fire somebody because they're not getting this COVID vaccine. You dare not try to mandate any medical treatment upon any of your employees. And I mean that from state to city to town to private and public employers. If they can do it in Florida, I think we can do it here.
Do you think we'll ever see justice for what we witnessed the last 4 years? Because as you mentioned, with the vaccine, that should be a personal health decision. It should never have been a blanket approach. Did it end up being okay for some people? Probably. Did it end up being deadly for some people? Yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
But where's the justice? That's what's so frustrating is they want to kind of just sweep it under the rug and move on and pretend like, that didn't happen, but it did happen.
Yes.
And it's still happening to an extent. Will we ever get any justice?
There's just no way to wheel that back. I mean, there's people that feel like they've not died but had severe problems now because they've gotten the vaccine. How are they going to ever get that justice when they can't even sue the vaccine companies? That's crazy, honestly.
Right.
And there was such a rush to get this to market that should be a red flag to anyone that cares about their health. So unfortunately, I wish I had known you. I wish you had known of me or something
where were you?
during this, because I would have loved to have helped you. But by God's grace, everyone I helped get the religious exemption got it. And there was actually another exemption that I helped get, and it wasn't particularly religious in this mix of things. It was basically, he was saying, as a point of freedom and medical issues, and he was able to also get an exemption. you didn't necessarily, and I don't think you should have to just always show medical, a religious exemption just to that. There's a lot of reasons, like you said, there's medical reasons, and also just personal privacy reasons why you should not have to go through that.
And that was my position. For me, it was a matter of principle of these are my God-given rights.
Yep.
I'm not making this decision based off of my religious beliefs.
No.
Therefore, I'm not going to do a religious make one up, because for me it was the principle behind it. Well, I mean,
it was ludicrous that they were trying to push this on pregnant and nursing moms, where they never have done that before.
Terrifying.
They've never tried to make them take any experimental drug or treatment or vaccine. This was just bizarre that they were pushing. They were even pushing it on babies. And there was no evidence that any kids even get COVID or ever got it unless they had some other issue. Like they were.
Yeah, it was not affecting
chemotherapy
them.
or something, or some pretty significant issue.
Right.
It was never an issue with kids.
Right. So I want to shift gears a little bit and utilize your expertise of the Constitution here, because another issue here in Utah and across the country is we will hear people say, it is my constitutionally protected right to dance in front of children in a provocative way, in a sexualized manner. And that's a constitutionally protected right. And so there's this balance of protecting children from sexualized behavior, from adult content. And we see it in even our FCC, our movie ratings, our TV ratings are rated so that as parents, we can make somewhat informed decisions of what our children should and should not watch. Yet we have some who push for, in just the public square or children's venues, to have these adult-oriented events.
Yeah.
What's the balance there?
Well, the craziest thing is, for some reason, with a lot of these sexual confusion issues, they're throwing out the rulings and the understanding of the First Amendment. They're doing that in schools, in school libraries,
right?
And they're doing it on parades and things like this. It's been well known that you cannot expose minors to harmful materials, and that means any particular venue. You need to go hide it away in a club where you have to card people to come in to make sure that they're adults. That's been that way for years. There's also what's called time, place, and manner restrictions that you put on these kinds of shows. In Utah, as in a lot of states, you can't have alcoholic beverages mixed with different pornographic depictions, live shows, and these kinds of things. What they're trying to do is take what's in a private adult show and throw it out on the main street.
And normalize it for kids.
Yep, and that is just outrageously wrong. And we need to put a stop to that. I think it was, I said this last time, I think it was Texas A&M. They were able to close down one of these parades. Wow, if Texas A&M can, we certainly should be able to in the cities and towns of Utah.
Yeah. Well, thank you for being, willing to speak up about that issue, because that's another one where people shy away and, I'm not going to talk about my opinion on this, or else they might cancel me.
The other candidates aren't. There's a lot of these issues the other candidates are kind of steering away from.
Oh, yeah. I've been told by people who have worked very closely with one of the other candidates in the SCC that, they've not supported resolutions to protect women and women's sports.
Yeah.
So that's concerning if someone lacks the courage to speak the truth.
Yeah. Yeah, people are worried once they get this political disease where they think everything is about keeping them in office, getting into office first of all, and then keeping and staying in office. I'm going to do what's right. I don't care if I'm a one-term AG. I don't think I'll ever go more than 2 terms because I'm actually 62 now, and I've spent my entire career as an attorney. Hasn't been doing all these hodgepodge of, different things in the Senate or in bureaucracies. It's actually been being an attorney. So this is it. I'm not going to run for any other office. It's Attorney General. And I'm not going to be worrying about, are you going to get elected if you take a strong stand on this? I can guarantee you, and you can guarantee this as well, if I take a strong stand on women's sports and bathrooms, I will get a lot of opposition.
Oh,
and there'll
absolutely.
be well-funded people that will want to run against me to take out this terrible person because he's a conservative, and he's actually is a conservative, not just in word, but in deed.
Yes.
And so I'm not going to compromise on that. Life's too short to say that I'm going to compromise myself just to stay in office. I'd rather lose and get not reelected but in fact stand where I should on these constitutional issues.
Absolutely. Well, thank you, Frank, for your courage, for putting yourself through the ringer of this election process, for being an alpha male, because we need that more than ever, especially in an attorney general. So the last 15 seconds, where can people find you and support you?
Yes, Frank Mylar, 4ag.com. Please go there. I need your donations. I don't have corporations and these special interest groups, so please donate at Frank Mylar, 4ag.com, and you can also volunteer through that site.
Thanks, Frank.
Thanks for being a part of the Michelle Tanner Podcast. Please like, follow, subscribe, and share. And always remember to keep exposing truth.
But I won't back down. No, I won't back down.
This has been a production from a podcast studio.